Because of why I search the deep through endless nights, no time to sleep. The call inside I can't deny. I'll find the light because of why.
So, is Europe in decline? You hear this question a lot, right? And it kicks off some pretty heated debates. Well, today we're going to dig past the headlines. We're looking at the hard data, the population trends, and the really tough choices that are shaping Europe's future.
Let's start with this quote. It really gets to the heart of the matter. When a young professional from Spain is asked if she'll go back home after graduation, her answer is an immediate no. And that's not just her personal choice, you know. It's a huge red flag. It points to a serious brain drain, something Europe is really struggling with.
And that really brings us to the core question we're tackling today. Why are so many of Europe's talented young people looking elsewhere? Turns out, it's not just one thing. It's a mix of a stalling economy, what some call a demographic time bomb, and a big political identity crisis.
All right, so to really unpack all this, we're going to break it down into 5 parts. We'll start with that feeling of a fading promise, then dive into the sputtering economic engine. After that, we'll look at the continent getting older, the political gridlock, and then we'll wrap up with the big one. What does the future hold?
So first up, this idea of a fading promise. For so long, Europe was the place to be, a symbol of progress, of prosperity. But now there's this growing feeling, as some have put it, that it's turning into a pretty museum. You know, beautiful to visit, but maybe not the place where you'd build a dynamic future.
And this isn't just a feeling. The numbers tell a pretty stark story. Right now, Europe's slice of the global GDP pie is just 15%. Now think about this. At the beginning of the 2000s, it was almost 25%. That's a huge drop. We're not talking about a slow decline here. This is a massive shift in economic power on the world stage.
Okay, that brings us to our second point, the sputtering economic engine. I mean, Europe's economy used to be an absolute powerhouse, right? But now it's really struggling. And the reason why is that the very foundations it was built on are starting to crack.
Just look at this number, 0.7%. That's the entire Eurozone's projected growth for 2024. I mean, other major economies are growing like crazy, and Europe is, well, it's barely moving. And this isn't just a blip, not just one bad year. It's a trend, and it's squeezing everything from job growth to new ideas.
And if you want a perfect example, just look at Germany. For decades, it was the undeniable economic engine of the whole continent. But now, it's been hit with 2 straight years of recession. What's happening in Germany is basically a snapshot of the challenges the rest of Europe is facing.
So what happened? Well, Germany's whole economic model was built on a few key things that have just crumbled. First, the cheap gas from Russia, that's gone. Second, China used to be a huge customer, but now it's a major competitor. And on top of that, Germany's own strict, balanced budget policy meant they stopped investing in crucial things like new tech and infrastructure.
And look, this isn't just a Germany problem. The whole continent is finding it tough to keep pace. You can see the contrast right here. Europe is often tangled up in red tape and heavy regulations. Meanwhile, you've got these new global powers that are all about speed, ambition, and just a relentless drive for innovation and growth. It's a totally different game.
All right, on to our third big piece of the puzzle, the demographics. Now, this problem isn't new, but we're really starting to feel the consequences. To put it simply, Europe is getting old, and it's getting old fast. And that, well, that has massive implications for the economy.
Get this. In 2023, the EU saw its biggest drop in births in a single year since the early 60s. The fertility rate is now just 1.38. And here's why that number is so critical. To simply keep a population stable, you need a rate of 2.1. Europe isn't even close.
So what does this mean for the future? Well, by 2050, for every single person over 65, there will be fewer than 2 people of working age to support them. Just think about the insane pressure that puts on pensions, on healthcare, on everything. The whole system is basically flipping upside down.
And this leads to a huge contradiction, a real dilemma. On one hand, simple economics says Europe desperately needs immigrants to fill jobs and pay taxes. But on the other hand, politically, anti-immigration feeling is on the rise. So you've got this head-on collision between what's necessary and what's popular.
And as if these long-term trends weren't enough, you then get these sudden shocks to the system. The war in Ukraine, for example, led to a massive sudden wave of refugees. It just goes to show how unpredictable this all is, and it throws another really complex layer onto an already difficult situation. Which brings us neatly to our fourth point, the politics of it all, and Europe's tricky position on the world stage. The continent feels like it's stuck in a vice, squeezed between its own internal arguments and massive pressure from the outside.
You know, some experts have a pretty blunt term for this: strategic sleepwalking. The idea is basically that the world is changing at lightning speed, but Europe has been too slow to wake up and react. It's becoming more passive, more dependent, and its influence is just slipping away.
You can really see this tension in the words people use. Officially, Europe's goal is strategic autonomy, being its own boss on the world stage. But a lot of critics would say the reality is something else entirely, that Europe has become more of a vassal to the US, unable to make its own big moves.
The war in Ukraine was a huge turning point. By cutting off cheap Russian energy and doubling down on its alliance with the US, Europe basically hit the accelerator on its own deindustrialization. From one point of view, that decision really locked the continent into an even more dependent relationship.
As one expert, Pascal Boniface, puts it so clearly, the world we've known since World War II, it just doesn't exist anymore. That stable, predictable world where Europe did so well, it's been replaced by something much more chaotic, much more competitive. So, okay, we've looked at the economy, the aging population, the geopolitics. It's a lot. And it all leads to our final and maybe most important section. Where does Europe go from here? So is Europe's fate sealed? Is it destined to become that pretty museum we talked about? Or can it break out of this rut and reinvent itself? Does it have what it takes to make those huge, difficult changes needed to forge a new path, to go from being a regulator to a real innovator, and from a dependent partner to a true global power? Look, this is a huge, complicated debate with no easy answers. And that's why we really want to hear from you. What do you think? Is this decline unstoppable? Or is there a path to renewal? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this deep dive useful, do us a favor and hit that like button, share it with someone who'd be interested, and subscribe for more explainers just like this. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.